Carol Paez, P-A-E-Z, 34 Valley Road. I moved into our home in 2001 on the next house after the Boland house going towards Lake Denmark. Mr. Zimmerman stated in his report, while somewhat unconventional, quote from the report, while somewhat unconventional, the containers do achieve their purpose of providing a solid sound and visual barrier. The closest non-southern dwelling.
Excuse me, ma'am, can I interrupt you 1 second?
Sure.
You testified under oath,
Correct.
correct? So, we don't want you to reiterate your sworn testimony, okay?
Mhm.
What you should be doing now is simply giving public comment, your opinions or whatever
Mhm.
about the application. Since you already
Okay.
testified, you were called by Mr. Kins. I'm just
Correct,
taking my
but
notes.
these reports were long after I had testified.
Okay,
In other words,
that's fine, you
comments
can address those
too.
reports.
Okay.
But I just don't want you to
Right.
reiterate.
I'm trying not to, that's why these things
Okay.
are, I hope, if I did, I'm getting pretty old, so if I do seem to repeat, then you let me know,
I
okay?
just want you to be aware of what you can do and
Yeah,
not to
because I
repeat
tried
what you testified under
to
oath.
not
Okay,
repeat
thank you.
that. Okay, so he said the closest non-southern dwelling further along Valley Road to the northeast is 215 feet from the subject property. This dwelling cannot see the subject property. By the description, he's referring to my property. Now can I refer to during testimony? During testimony, let me shut up if I can. I provided photos taken from my yard that shows unsightly metal containers and giant cranes and or backhoes that tower over these containers. Since these containers and giant machines are part of Southern's property, the statement, "this dwelling cannot see the subject property," is incorrect. The trees that I saw before the addition of metal containers were much more pleasing and harmonious with the neighborhood. In 1985, metal containers were not needed for a sound or visual barrier. The fact that they were installed around 2007 indicates that noise was not a problem before this date. Mr. Zimmerman presented that the present use remains true to the 1985 conclusion of the board that the use is not discordant or disharmonious with the neighborhood. Based on the testimonies presented by the neighbors this evening, it is obvious that this is not true. In the 1985 resolution, the township set guidelines to assure Southern site would remain residential friendly. For example, the resolution stated, the subdivision and relocation of railroad ties will create a more residential environment along Valley Road. The township was concerned about I'm thinking the township by that, I looked at it, in my opinion, the township was showing concern about the very high piles of railroad ties that could be viewed from Valley Road. A 12-foot height restriction was placed on these ties even though they were to be relocated. It's my opinion that the resolution only put the limitation on railroad ties, only on railroad ties, because there were no other eyesores over that height at that time. And if indeed the containers and huge piles of scrap metal that are there now had been there in 1985, that same height restriction on those items would have been included and should be applied now. The 1985 resolution also stated landscaping should be done so there would be visible improvement to the area. It's my opinion this was to minimize the unsightly views for the neighborhood. The expansion has indeed resulted in quite the opposite. More equipment, containers, huge piles of scrap metal are clearly visible from Valley Road or neighbors' homes. Presently, the neighborhood has lost its residential character, peace and tranquility, as well as a result of the business expansion of Southern Salvage. If back in 1985 the township wanted to hide the operation from the views seen on Valley Road near the entrance, then they definitely wanted to hide it from their backyards and front yard views. Mr. Zimmerman stated, the spirit and intent of the condition was to remove a highly visible salvage material from Valley Road view. Today, giant backhoes and cranes tower over the metal containers are in our view on a daily basis. The large trucks that we constantly see in here have destroyed the residential character of our neighborhood as well. I was not here in 1985, but I can tell you this type of truck traffic did not exist prior to 2007. I was here. And is evidence of Southern Salvage expansion. The constant truck noise is not residential friendly. Noise experts provided reports based on decibel levels. I believe these are irrelevant when it comes to living with constant noise. I asked the board, may I play a 30-second recording for you?
I'm sorry?
May I play a 30-second recording for you?
think that's necessary.
Well, what is this recording of? When was it taken?
It was taken about 2012, and it's what we live with day in and day out.
Is there any reason why this wasn't brought up during testimony?
I
When you
think that
testified?
Well, you're asking her or you're asking me?
No, I'm asking her. Did she provide this, you know, we have certain procedural requirements. As you know, in fact, Mr. Shoulder was requested at the last meeting, which he complied, to present certain information exhibits, which he did. I don't think, just on that procedure alone, that it's fair for the board, certainly for council, for you to appear here tonight with something that, especially council, has not had an opportunity to listen to, neither has Mr. Kins or whatever. So I'm not so sure, but I leave it to the board as to whether or not, you know, we're gonna allow this recording to be used.
Mr. Chairman, to hold members of the public to the same procedural requirements as attorneys and their clients in connection with the hearing that has occurred here, I think is unfair on the other side.
We
There's
did it with
nothing-
Mr. Shoulder. He provided as an objector, he provided materials to the board. This evening, he provided it within 10 days.
That's fine, that's fine, but there's no requirement in any case authority or the MLUL which says a member of the public cannot display or demonstrate a video, a
I'm not
photograph, or a
suggesting
tape.
that they can't do it, but procedurally, would it be nice to have this provided, as everybody else, including Mr. Shoulder, provided it to the board prior to tonight, and especially the council?
It would have been nice, I guess, but is it procedurally required?
I
No,
want to hear from council.
it's not required
I
anyway.
would object to presenting it because if this witness is not being sworn, we have no just a foundation for where this tape was taken, where, when it was taken, if it actually is representative of the area of any operations from the salvage yard. She could state what it is at this point, but without being sworn and testify, we can't hold her to that statement. And I would place an objection to
My concern with this is a noise recording. Now, it's impossible to say what the volume of the actual noise is because it's a recording. The volume could be up or down, and we can never know what the actual.
It's okay, because I can give you another example. I don't need to play the recording. I think you've all probably had it quite clear now from everybody here that the noise is not minor. Could I ask you though, who was here when they were doing the construction across the hall during one of these meetings? Were any of you here when they were doing the construction across the hall? Do you see a show of hands? None of you were here? Was anyone in the back here when they were doing the construction? The audience view, none of you were here. None of you, okay. In any event, they were doing construction across the hall, all right? We were having this hearing, meeting, one of our wonderful meetings here. And, I mean, it was tremendous disturbance. Decibel levels probably didn't exceed 65 decibel levels. No, probably didn't. But it was interrupting this meeting. And that's the same thing with these sounds. The decibel levels are irrelevant to me. It is the sound that we have to live with day in and day out, and that interrupts our lives. It eliminates the peace and tranquility of our homes. It is definitely disharmonious. It is definitely discordant. However, all the variances requested by Southern are for additions they made without permission from the township to expand their operations without regard for the peace and tranquility, and are indeed discordant and non-harmonious for the neighborhood. With this in mind, I ask the board to deny all variances requested by Southern Sellers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?